welcome back to Indie Cult Horror. This month we're going to look at my interview with Bill Lustig. Lustig directed the grisly, violent classic Maniac, which is of course known for the brutally perfect effects by Tom Savini. After that he went on to make the Maniac Cop films and some more crime thrillers. And at the time of this interview, he's promoting the new company then, which was Blue Underground. Blue Underground, they make special edition, collector's editions of cult and horror films from the Grindhouse era. This is also the last of the three interviews I did at the first batch that I did for this project at the Fangoria's Weekend of Horror 2003. Hope you enjoy. Okay, so you could just introduce yourself, please.
Hi, I'm Bill Lustig, filmmaker and founder of Blue Underground DVD.
Okay. First, I'd like to talk about your filmmaking. One thing I've noticed about your films is New York City is always the background. Was that a choice, or was that just convenience, or is that just something that you felt was part of the stories?
I began my filmmaking career in New York City, so most of my early films, actually all my early films, were shot in New York City, and I enjoy the energy of New York, and it brings a character to the movies that a city like Los Angeles sometimes doesn't.
In Maniac Cop series and Maniac and the other films as well, there's a lot of extreme violence. Did you ever have any problems from the actors or anyone on the crew with that, or was that just kind of a taken?
The only film I've done that really had what I would call extreme violence was Maniac. And none of the actors were in any way offended by it. In fact, everybody got kind of a kick out of it. It was kind of a chance for us to all play naughty children and go play in the mud, and in the case of Maniac, was playing in the blood. And but no, nobody was ever offended by it. In fact, people just really found it kind of a kick to be killed in that movie.
Maniac specifically has a very sinister feel to it. Just the tone of the film is very dark. Do you feel that that's mostly from Joe Spinell's acting, or just an overall feature of the subject matter?
Yeah, Maniac's darkness was, well, number one, it was shot very low budget, so we had no lights. The subject matter was a dark subject matter, so it kind of all worked together. We also shot the film at 16 millimeter, which gave the film, when blown up to 35, a kind of a gritty look to the picture. And Joe Spinell just has an inherent kind of film noirish look about him. You know, he has always played bad guys in the movies, and here he was taking it a step further by playing this killer. And he brought his Joe Spinell brought his inherent dark look to the movie. So all of that stuff together kind of gave that film a look and a feel that I could have never planned on.
How was working with him as an actor?
Joe Spinell was a troubled man, but a very professional actor. I mean, he was someone, although this was my first movie, Joe treated me with the respect that he accorded filmmakers of much greater stature than a guy who was 24 years old making his first movie. He was very respectful of my suggestions to him. He had many of his own, some of which I wish I had done. But he was a troubled man. He had substance abuse problems that were, that kept him, I think, from fulfilling his potential.
Now, I know from the Laserdisc and from DVD supplements, there was talk, if he had still been around, that there would have been a sequel. Was that just sort of like a
pet concept, or was it something that you were really hoping to do?
Okay. I personally never wanted to do a sequel to Maniac, so I sold the rights to a company who did want to do a sequel, and Joe was set to star in it, and in fact, Joe died while about 4 weeks from shooting the sequel to Maniac. They were in pre-production, and when Joe passed away. So it was headed for the cameras. It just, unfortunately, Joe died.
And working with Savini on that film, how was that?
Tom Savini is what I would call a man-child. He's someone who, loves to play, loves to joke around, never says no to a challenge, and just had a load of suggestions that many of which we used in the movie Maniac, and I really love Tom. I think he's just a really cool guy and a little crazy, but so is everyone else. One of my fondest memories of Tom was his impromptu stunts. There was a time when we were walking down the hall of my apartment building when he just out of the blue just decided to flip in the air and land on his back, and so now 20 years later, I challenged Tom to do the same thing, and sure enough, he did it. So he's still the same as he was then.
There was I don't know if this was more or less a rumor, but he had kind of distanced himself from Maniac for a while there, I think, because it was so sinister.
There was an interview that Tom had done, and a couple of interviews that Tom had done where he had some not so kind words to say about the violence in the movie Maniac, which kind of bothered me because after the first screening of the film, which Tom attended, he embraced me for not having cut any of his effects. So I thought it was kind of hypocritical of him when we started to get some heat from certain interest groups, about the violence in Maniac, and Tom sort of took the road of less resistance and sort of joined them for a bit. But that's all water under the bridge, I love Tom. He's a great guy, and we've kissed and made up, and I have no ill feelings about that. I mean, life goes on.
Okay, Maniac Cop. Working on that film, working with Bruce Campbell, how was that?
Well, working with Bruce Campbell on Maniac Cop was really fun. Bruce is a very introspective, quiet guy, but very serious about his work. And I called Bruce up. Bruce was a friend of mine. I called him up when before we even had a script on Maniac Cop, and Larry Cohen had just written a few pages, but we knew we needed the St. Patrick's Day parade to play a role in Maniac Cop. So I called Bruce. I said, Bruce, I'm doing this movie called Maniac Cop. Don't ask me about a script, but I need you to come to New York and wear clothes that we can duplicate later. Excuse me. And sure enough, he jumped on a plane, came to New York, and that's how we started Maniac Cop. In fact, Sam Raimi helped us out with that as well.
I noticed that he has a quick part in there, Sam Raimi. And I also noticed that your name pops up as fake Shemp credits in some of Raimi's films.
There was a period of time that Sam and I would do guest appearances in each of our films. And he also does an appearance in Maniac Cop 2, but that was cut out of the feature version, but is in the television version.
About that. One thing I kind of realized watching Maniac Cop recently was that it kind of reminded me of Darkman, that kind of almost like a hero film, how that had that kind of a feel to it when you're not quite sure in the beginning. And I realized that it predates it quite a bit there.
Yeah. Actually, the funny part is when I was working on those scenes of the first scenes we shot on Maniac Cop. We went out for a St. Patrick's Day lunch in New York, and Sam told me the story of Darkman. But no, the Maniac Cop was, he only told me the story of Darkman when I had no, it was a pure Larry Cohen script, and it had, Larry I know was not influenced by Darkman.
Kind of wondering actually if it was the reverse, if
No.
maybe it influenced
No,
framing.
Sam already had the idea for Darkman. He had expressed the idea to me. No, no way. Darkman was not influenced by Maniac Cop.
So, why did you leave directing?
Well, I never really made a conscious decision one day to say, I'm leaving directing. It just, in the 90s, stopped being fun. It was a period of time when the independents were becoming more bureaucratic. The theatrical opportunities for independent films became less and less. And I just felt as though it was, I was getting bored. I was getting, I felt unfulfilled doing films. And so I started to dabble in restoring older films. Kind of a proactive way of building my video collection, but it now grew into a business. I mean, I came in at the ground floor of DVD, which is mushroomed.
And how did
so I haven't looked back at directing.
How did your collaboration with Anchor Bay, how did that happen?
Through my collaboration with Anchor Bay happened through a gentleman by the name of Jay Douglas, who was their VP of Acquisitions, and he wanted to get into DVD in a serious way. Had found resistance from the powers at the time. They didn't see the future of DVD, and so what I became is this independent contractor who was going out and producing the DVDs for Anchor Bay, because he could not get permission to hire anybody to do it within the company. And that was it, and the rest is history. I produced about 300 DVDs for Anchor Bay.
Did you have any, how much in the decision making of what films that you were working on, like what films were being worked on as transfers and extras that were being worked on?
Well, the fun part about what we were doing at Anchor Bay was Jay and I pretty much had the autonomy. I should really say Jay did, but we kind of collaborated on what movies we were going to do, what extras we would do, who we would interview. It was really a very fun period of time building Anchor Bay. And once it became big, it became less so, because all of a sudden when something becomes big, it became more bureaucratic. But in the early stages, it was a lot of fun. We were picking up the movies we wanted to see ourselves, and doing state-of-the-art transfers, and really just having a ball.
So the next thing then would be the new company, Blue Underground.
Yes.
How did that come about?
Blue Underground, I began Blue Underground a year and a half ago, when it became clear that the future of Anchor Bay was not going to be, was not something I wanted to be a part of. It became a really oppressive environment, which really was crushing creativity, and it was not a place I really wanted to be. So. While I was still continuing to produce titles for Anchor Bay, I started my own label, Blue Underground. And to really kind of go back to where we were when we started, when we started the Anchor Bay DVDs, which was taking an approach of having fun and doing the kinds of films we wanted to see.
With the title, well, Anchor Bay as a title doesn't really say much of anything, but with the title like Blue Underground, that kind of like conjures certain types of films to mind. But from what I've seen of what your lineup is, it doesn't really coincide. I don't know. I kind of expected more sexually explicit films.
My idea about Blue Underground was that it was a company that was dedicated to guilty pleasures. And guilty pleasures to me are not always sexual in nature. To me, a guilty pleasure to me could be, even a kid's movie could be a guilty pleasure. I never saw it as being a solely, a sexually oriented company. But I mean, some people draw that conclusion when they hear the name of the company. You're not the first one.
So is there anything else that you'd like to add at this point?
No, no, that's it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Well, thanks again for tuning in for Indie Cult Horror, and I'll see you next month with another interview and some more great cult films to talk about. Thanks.